Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of January 12, 2022. In accordance with the Governor's Healthy Washington guidelines and to protect city employees and members of the public from transmission of COVID-19, the City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting remotely. We are prepared to reopen the council chambers to public meetings when public health considerations indicate it is safe to do so. There are several ways in which you can engage with the council and participate in our meetings. To watch or participate in a remote meeting, you may watch council meetings on Comcast Channel 21 or Frontier Channel 29. You may also watch live online at www.everettwa.gov/citycouncil, where you may also watch past meetings. And you may call in to listen to the live meeting at any point by dialing 425-616-3920. Conference ID is 724-887-726#. You may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you go to the register here to provide comment via Zoom link, you'll need to fill the form out completely if you wish to provide a public comment at a future meeting. After the form is submitted, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link and number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by submitting comments in writing to council@everettwa.gov. For assistance, you may contact the council office at 425-257-8703 or email our council administrator, Deb Williams, at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. Please note that we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office, and we do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Outside of our meetings, members of the public are always welcome to contact council members or provide comments or concerns on any matter via email at council@everettwa.gov or by calling the City Council office at 425-257-8703. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Fossey,
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Here.
Councilmember Ryan,
Here.
Councilmember Schwab,
Here.
Councilmember Vogely,
Here.
Councilmember Toohey,
Here.
President Stone Cipher.
Here. I would like to now call on Councilmember Ryan to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. I'd be honored. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Snohomish people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. And I'll call on Councilmember Zarlingo to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the special meeting on January 3rd, 2022?
Councilmember Toohey makes the motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting.
Councilman Schwab will second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for the January 3rd meeting minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Fossey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey,
Yes.
President Stone Cipher.
Yes. And now I will entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the January 5th, 2022 meeting. I hear a motion.
Councilmember Ryan, so
Councilmember
moved.
Zarlingo, so moved.
Okay, we've got a motion from Councilmember Ryan. Perhaps Councilmember Zarlingo will second that.
Yes, I second that. This is Councilmember Zarlingo.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Thank you. Now we will move on to our agenda, and good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Yeah, good evening, Council, and good evening, President Stonecipher. Tonight, I have quite a few appointments that I'm asking for your support to be appointed to our boards and commissions. Each candidate that I'm introducing this evening was interviewed by staff for their applicable background and the board that we're going to consider. Obviously, we also look for equity, geographic location, and diversity of thought for the candidates. So please be patient. I have a lot of names to read, and there'll be more coming in the coming weeks. So first, to the library board, position 2, Joshua Glasgow for a 4-year term. To the Civil Service Commission, position 3, Scott Bader for a 6-year term. To the Everett Housing Authority, position 1, John Trainer, filling a vacancy ending October 2023. Position 2, Paul Manzel, a 5-year term. And position 4, George Perez for a 5-year term. To our board of our Parks Board of Commissioners, position 1, Erica Diaz, a 1-year term. Position 2, Will Kagi for a 5-year term. Position 3, Jacob Close for a 6-year term. And position 4, Monica Suarez for a 6-year term. And I apologize to anyone whose name I'm mispronouncing. To our diversity board, position 8, James Simic to a 2-year term. Position 9, Ozga Demisiri Richardson, 2-year term. I apologize there. Position 10, Jean Berry to a 2-year term. Position 11, Tamar Caldwell for filling a vacancy ending December 31st, 2022. Position 12, Grace Martinez to a 2-year term. Position 13, Saeed Almana to a 2-year term. Position 14, Natalia Toon for a 2-year term. And position 15, Terry Lott for a 2-year term. To our Historical Commission, Colin Palin for a 6-year term, Madison Vasquez for a 6-year term, Teresa Gemmer, alternate for positions for a 6-year term, and Ashley Bush, an alternate position for a 6-year term. And our Citizen Advisory Committee, position 2, Kathy Lynott, filling a vacancy ending December 31st, 2026. Position 3, Matt Bissell for a 6-year term. Position 4, Larissa Knopp, filling a vacancy to end December 31st, 2022. Position 5, Michelle Martin for a 6-year term. And let's see, I keep going. Position 8, Christopher Dingle for a 6-year term. Position 9, Marion Molly Eberhardt for a 6-year term. And position 10, Josh Brunner, filling a vacancy ending December 31st, 2022. And our Transportation Advisory Committee, position 3, Stephen Fickenshare for a 6-year term. Position 7, Daniel Wilkins, filling a vacancy to end December 31st, 2024. And lastly, for our Public Facilities District, Julio Cortez for a 4-year term and Scott Murphy for a 4-year term. And that is all the appointments I have. I would ask for your concurrence from our council.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to take these, we'll entertain a motion to approve all proposed appointments. And then once we have a motion and a second on the table, if there are any specific candidates that anyone would like to explore further, we can bring those up. Otherwise, we will vote on them as a slate. So do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Tui makes the motion to approve the slate of recommendations for boards and commissions as brought forth.
Councilmember Fosse seconds.
We have a motion and a second. If there is any council member who would like to explore any of these appointments further, please unmute yourself and make yourself known at this time.
Vogely has a comment. Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yay, I am so happy that everybody is being appointed. There's always that. I noticed 2 zip codes in my zip code, 98204. But I do have a question, and that is, can a person serve on more than one board or commission at a time? Because a couple of the people appointed here are also requesting to serve for the districting committee. So that's my question, but congratulations to everyone appointed.
The answer is yes, they can. We work hard to try to, Nicole Weber has recently taken over our boards and commissions and has done an outstanding job in working to diversify our boards. Often we've had many candidates from North Everett, fewer from South Everett, fewer people of color, and we're really working hard to bring more equity to our boards and commissions. And part of that is also hoping that the same people don't sit on multiple boards and commissions. So some people that have been on a board or commission for a long time are also a little disappointed because we're trying not to always reappoint people, but to get some new voices there, but they can serve. So you are definitely able to appoint somebody to the districting commission if they're on one of these boards and commissions.
Thank you. That's a good question and clarification.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we call the roll? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes.
And with that, I have no further comments. Thank you very much. And I look forward to bringing more candidates for your consideration in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to council comments and liaison reports, and we will open that with Councilmember Fosse.
Thanks. Well, that was exciting. I went to the Riverside Neighborhood Association meeting this week, and they had a few speakers talking about emergency preparedness and ham radios. It was Victor Harris and Jim Grieco and Roger Hunt. And it's fascinating. They did bring up a concern about what the status was on some of the park bathrooms. So if somebody could follow up with me on that information, that would be amazing. It doesn't have to be right now. I know that's on the spot. And as we got our council liaison assignments, last week I attended the Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Policy Board, and they briefed us on the upcoming 2022 legislative session as well, but more geared towards kind of anticipated growth management related bills, as well as industrial land analysis update. And the other appointments and liaison assignments, we haven't dived into as far as meetings are concerned, but I'm going to be the chair of the planning committee, and I'll also be serving on the economic and cultural vitality committee and the public safety committee, and an alternate for the Snohomish County tomorrow. And then hopefully looking forward to attending the Cultural Arts Commission and the Historical Commission meeting soon. So that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, there are a couple of things that are just about to meet, so I'll have more of a substantial report next week. I'd like to thank the city staff for briefing me on a number of these things and being willing to meet and be flexible so that we can get off the ground as quickly as possible. So I think, and I'd like to thank Councilmember Vogely for getting underway on the Parks liaison and committee duties. Looking forward to meeting with them on their future developments. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you so much. Yeah, same goes for me as well. be starting liaison meetings next week, and I look forward to meeting with folks in the community and talking more about ways that Everett can be a great partner for the interests that they have been working on. And I'm also excited to get in touch with the folks who have applied for the districting commission. District 2 had the most applicants of all the districts, so good job, District 2. Very proud of you. And so I look forward to giving everybody a call and chatting through their qualification levels and interest in the board and the commission, and if there might be any other ways that we can help with getting folks plugged in. So really excited about that. And I also wanted, for my last comment, I wanted to follow up on what Council President Stonecipher shared last week about our hospitals and how overrun they've been recently with the COVID levels, and it's getting pretty scary. And at the media availability earlier this week with the Snohomish Health District, they shared that at Providence, at their ICU beds that are filled with COVID patients, 90% of those folks are unvaccinated. So I wanted to share a reminder with folks that if you can, please get vaccinated to protect yourselves and to protect our healthcare system. So that concludes my remarks for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, I want to thank the mayor's staff for working on the boards and commission appointments. I'd like to do a shout out to Council Administrator Deb Williams. She has 4 of us that she is, getting us on board. I know a little extra work for her, so I appreciate that. And I too this week will be interviewing those that applied for the district commission. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. Greetings, everybody. I have a few items to share tonight. First, I attended the Westmont Holly Neighborhood Association meeting last night. There was significant discussion pertaining to snow removal, community assistance regarding snow removal and other just neighborly things, traffic lanes, bicycle lanes, and red light cameras. Overall, it was quality of life services discussion, which I'll get into later. 2, I also attended the MRSC, or Municipal Research and Services Center, webinar on local climate response, building resiliency, and adapting to impacts. So utilizing the information shared there, it will certainly help in outreach and implementation of our own climate action plan. At this webinar, I also learned about the Puget Sound Climate Preparedness Collaborative. And I believe that our city should join that collaborative to improve outcomes of climate change preparedness efforts. Being chair of the Parks and Quality of Life with an emphasis on climate, I would like to fill out the membership form and be the contact person if that's appropriate. I've sent council and administration an email with a link to the PSC PC. There's no cost to being a member, so that should not stop us. And I don't know how that works exactly, so we'll talk about it. I don't think I need a definitive answer at this time. Finally, I would like to mention personal care and safety. We've all been dealing with the trauma of COVID-19 pandemic for 2 years now, and we're all very tired of it. It's been going on for so long that sometimes we forget that everyone else is suffering too. Work is different, school is different, travel is different, and everything is constantly changing. Please remember that you are not alone, you are loved, and you don't know what other problems are befalling the person next to you. So take care of yourself and others. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, last but not least, Councilmember Toohey.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight I don't have any liaison reports, and I have no further comments. So thank you.
Thank you. And for my report, I just wanted to remind council members that next week there will be an opportunity for council members to nominate someone for the district commission. Since we have many opportunities, or many people have signed up to do that, please come prepared with multiple ideas, because someone who might vote before you may nominate the person that you were thinking of as well. I want to point out that I will be absent next week, and so I will be providing my list of nominations to the city attorney. Mr. Hall will be acting on my nominations and bring forward whoever might be remaining when it comes my turn to do that. In my absence next week, Councilmember Vogely will be chairing the meeting. And then I wanted also to point out that our council retreat has been scheduled for Friday, January 28th from 4 to 8 p.m. At this point, I am anticipating that that will be a remote meeting and not in person. I think we are at a point in our community where it would be would not be a good idea for us to meet together in person. And then piggybacking on what was brought up by Councilmember Ryan earlier, our hospital, as of 2 days ago, had over 180 COVID patients admitted to the hospital. If you've been following the numbers that I've been reporting, that is more than double what they have had over the past few months. So I think that our community is really at risk here. They are operating at the hospital as if it were like wartime, kind of an emergency situation. Please, and as has been pointed out, most of these people are unvaccinated, and particularly those who are in ICU. So if you have not had an opportunity to get your vaccine, please do so. And if you are choosing not to be vaccinated, please mask up and stay away from others so that we can stop the spread of this illness. We are all, as has been pointed out, tired of it and hoping to get healthy and resume more normal activities. I think we will never probably be fully rid of COVID, but hopefully we can resume our normal activities. And I know I, for one, am really hoping that at some point very soon we will be able to resume our council meetings in person. We're missing a lot by holding those virtually and not having that opportunity to interact also with the residents and citizens who come to our meetings to see us in action. So be well out there, everyone. That's all from me. Do we have an update from administration this evening?
Thank you, Council President Stonecipher. Nick Harper with the Mayor's Office. No update this evening.
Thank you. And we'll move on to City Attorney, Mr. Hall.
I don't have anything to report tonight, but we are requesting a 15-minute executive session to discuss a legal matter pursuant to RCW 4231.10(1)I with no announcement to follow.
Thank you. Deb Williams, have we received any comments from the community for public comment this evening?
Good evening, President Stonecipher. We do not have anyone waiting to speak, and we have no written comment this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion for the one consent item?
Councilmember Toohey moves the one consent item.
Do we have a second?
Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We have one item for proposed action. Because this is a closing ordinance, we don't normally do a briefing on the closing ordinances. They go from proposed action to action immediately. But I do need to read this into the record at this point. So I'll read that. Item 2, Council Bill 2201-01, first reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled Sewer O Utility Upgrades, Fund 336, Program 013, as established by Ordinance Number 3760-20. The third and final reading will be on January 26th. And we'll move on to the council briefing agenda. These items come before the city council surveys as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 3 is the 2022 state legislative update. And I think we have Nick Harper here, Deputy Mayor Harper.
Call me whatever you want.
Good evening.
Council President Stonecipher. Thank you so much. Yes, we were joined tonight by our 2 state lobbyists, Aaron Jajic and Lisette Cadena, who are both here as presenters as well. They'll walk through the legislative agenda with you and an overview of this session, answer any questions you have about the agenda that I think shared yesterday. And as I indicated in my emails last week and this week, I'll be sending weekly updates to all of you as council on the status of the session, but don't view that as a barrier. You all have my mobile number, email, so call me anytime if you have questions, if you're hearing about legislative matters that you're curious about how the city is either weighing in or not and why. View me as your resource in that respect. As we have 4 new council members, most if not all of you have probably not met Aaron and Lisette before. We're very fortunate to have had them working with us this past 3 years, and they're a fabulous addition to our team. Both come with a wealth of knowledge. They'll walk through kind of the topical areas that each of them cover, but know that they represent the city exceptionally well in Olympia, and we're very lucky to have them working with and for us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron and Lisette, and thank you.
Good. Hi, good evening. It's good to see you all again and fun to see some new faces. I'm Aaron Jajic. I'm part of the lobbying team. Lisette and I thought we'd start tonight by giving you a high-level overview of how we kind of split up the topics. There's no way to cover all topics. And, when something comes up that doesn't cleanly fall in buckets, we just kind of decide who might be plugged in better or a better fit. So, but the areas that I typically cover when I'm doing work on behalf of you guys is public health, behavioral health, healthcare access, childcare, stuff around K-12, and somewhat watching the K-12 straddling to higher ed, police reform, stuff regarding the fire department, animals and our animal shelter, which I really love working on that. It's fun. Parks, outdoor and state lands. And then I've worked on the ASARCO cleanup effort that we've had for a couple of years and some of the stuff that falls into the capital budget. And Lisette, do you want to introduce yourself and your topics?
Hi, good evening. Good to see everybody. Lisette Cadena, and I sort of cover land use, housing, homelessness, utilities, economic development, transportation, and I know I'm forgetting a couple others, but I'm sure I'll remember as I go through the presentation, so I'll make sure I mention them as we're going through.
Great. And I thought I would start with kind of an overview, and you'll understand pretty quickly why we may struggle for words or seem very tired right now. And I'll start off by saying that session started on Monday, and it's called a short session, so it's 60 days. Last year was the long session, it's 105 days. So it's typically like the long session's the marathon where they do the big budget and lots of bills, and a short session is the shorter one. Usually it's kind of like your mid-month paycheck. They go in and adjust budgets and see where they need to spend more money or where they've saved money, and bills that didn't pass last year are available to be considered again. And then there's introduction of some new bills that typically are things that have arisen since they left last year, emerging issues or teeing stuff up for next year. The pretty incredible thing this year is last year, 105-day session, big year, there were 1,000 bills introduced. Before we started on Monday, 700 bills had been introduced this year, which is just an incredible amount of bills for a short session. And a lot of them do tackle emerging issues. They do, and I'll talk a bit about some of the themes of this year. And then there's a lot of bills that are just been introduced. So it's often running really fast. The first couple of days of hearings, they stacked bills. They were off and running. And that is because the first cutoff for a bill to survive is in 3 weeks from tomorrow. And that's the first step. It's called policy cutoff in their house of origin. And so the short session pace for bills is very, very quick. The other thing they already have begun working on is the budget. And as I mentioned, the supplemental year is usually like your mid-month. Just make some adjustments. You're like your paycheck mid-month. And this year they are finding themselves with $1 billion roughly still of federal assistance dollars. They're called ARPA. It was that last big round. I know you're all familiar with that. But they have about $1 billion of federal money that could be eligible, especially with mitigating the ongoing pandemic, the ramifications from it, as well as a surprising forecast that kept growing over the time they were away. The state budget is up by $3.6 billion this biennium. We're in the second half of the biennium. And that continues to being up $4 billion moving forward because we do out year budgeting. That's a really surprising number, I think. And so what you saw in the governor's budget and what we see legislators taking on is a bigger body of work in the budget this year. It's not that they're fully reopening it and opening everything up, but they have money to invest, and there's dialogues about what are the needs in our state right now for this money. That's really rare amount of money to be up in a supplemental budget. So there's more budget work than normal, but it's a good problem to have versus going into session $3 billion down, or $1 billion down would be a lot more challenging. We won't see another budget proposal until the end of February, when each chamber will produce their own budgets. And then they quickly start truing them up and reaching a final budget by March 10th, which is when session ends. So it's really fast, 60 days when you start to look at how quick things have to move. I think, Lisette, that was all I had. Did I miss anything for kind of overview? Also, I thought I'd talk about some of the big things that are up in discussion this year in my area.
No, that was a good overview.
Okay. And so, obviously, a lot of this is going to resonate with you all, and we're happy to take questions on any of these topics. But behavioral health is an issue that has been on the forefront in Washington State for a couple years. Like, we have probably underfunded behavioral health. We have a lot of needs in our community-based behavioral health system. And then you add on 2 years of this pandemic and at-home virtual learning, the things we all went through, and the need for behavioral health services and behavioral health needs that are unmet have really grown. It's interesting, you just see it throughout a lot of committees. This isn't just sitting in healthcare and behavioral health. It's showing up in dialogues around schools a lot already. There were bills about social emotional learning supports. There's a lot around K-12 overall of holding the schools harmless in their enrollments and like how they do their buses and saying like, let's just get through this. And then that layering in, what do kids need, right? And you see that continue into like helping families and with a youth angle for sure, but families overall with basic needs and economic recovery. And that can look things like food access. Lisette will get into some of the housing. There's dialogue about potential expansion of the working families tax credit. There's a lot of talk about workforce and burnout in critical sectors for the pandemic, like healthcare, behavioral health, long-term care. Lots of bills introduced on that and early hearings occurring, talking about some of the tensions going on there and different ways to approach it. Underlying session is something someone mentioned earlier. The hospitals are at the cusp of full. And there's a couple of reasons. There's some folks in the hospital that probably would be better served out of the hospital. They don't need to be there anymore, but the counts are growing as well. So you hear a lot of that in Olympia too, is kind of what are we going to do about the hospitals? There is a lot of work being done they kind of frame it as clarify the police reform bills from last year. And I know you guys have heard about this. So we've seen a lot of bills introduced. We're working tightly with the chief. He's been reviewing them. We've been analyzing our approach on each of them. 3 of them had a hearing already this week. They're off and running on that topic. And I'll pause there and let you go into a couple bills or topics in your area that are moving.
Great, thank you, Erin. So I'm sure one big item that folks have been hearing about or has been in the press a lot lately is the long-term care and the implementation of the long-term care. There are currently 2 bills being considered by the legislature because they have received a lot of feedback from their constituencies. One of them is delaying the implementation of the long-term care until July 1st of 2023. And the other one is providing those exemptions that folks have been talking about to military spouses, folks serving in the military, as well as individuals who may work in Washington State, but live outside of the state. So that's one huge big policy piece that they are trying to tackle before they do a lot of the other items. And it's something that is at everybody's forefront. The other item that is pretty big this session is affordable housing and trying to address missing middle housing, as the governor likes to call it. The governor allocated about $500 million for affordable housing, which is a substantial amount of money in light of the amount of revenue that has been coming to the state. So there are a lot of folks advocating to make sure that that money is included in either House and Senate proposals and makes it to the finish line on March 10th. Missing middle is, I feel like, the hot topic amongst folks working on housing and affordable housing. And the governor has a proposal, and there will be competing proposals in the coming days to sort of try to lessen the loss of local control. So I'll backtrack a little bit. The governor's proposal is sort of saying that, you know, cities will have to allow for the development of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, sixplexes, sevenplexes, townhomes, and community apartments in all single family zones. Representative Paulette is going to have his bill that will tweak that a little bit. We haven't seen that language, but we anticipate seeing that pretty soon. Try to lessen the impact of losing local control in regards to zoning. There are also a lot of accessory dwelling unit bills being considered as a way to help address affordable housing and help seniors age in their homes if they need to be, or not have to lose their homes because of their care. A lot of those bills really center around possibly eliminating the occupancy requirement that a lot of cities currently have on the books or are considering removing from the books. The other big topic is clean energy. A lot of this has to do with the work that the governor and a lot of legislators did on the Climate Commitment Act. The governor is really looking to try to help alleviate and provide some funding to those energy sectors, or to those sectors that are impacted by the Climate Commitment Act, and trying to find a way to help those workers transition into clean energy fields. So that is a huge scope of work in the Environment Committee that will be taking place. The other big item, I know many of you know this, is transportation. The transportation budget doesn't have a lot of money to work with, has not seen the huge flux of revenues that the operating budget has seen. In fact, they have seen a reduction with all of us staying home and working from home and not driving. So the only way that they can address a lot of the fundamental projects that many of the communities are advocating for is with a transportation revenue proposal. We have a new chair in the Senate Transportation, Senator Liaison. He has mentioned that he is looking at developing a transportation revenue proposal that does not involve a gas tax increase, but sort of looks at other small fees that could be implemented and potentially using some of the climate commitment dollars as well as federal funding to help build a transportation revenue proposal that would be for 15 years and still fund a substantial amount of transportation projects. He anticipates potentially releasing ideas on that within the next couple of weeks, and this afternoon entered into conversations with the House to see what the appetite would be from House transportation leaders on pushing something forward. So we will see how that all comes together. I think we just threw a lot at you, so happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Let's see what questions we have from council members. We're going to start with Councilmember Fossey.
Hello again. I noticed that it looks pretty similar to the priorities from last session. Are you doing anything with regards to the revenue options to address like the structural budget challenges?
Yeah, and thank you for that. It's good to see you. Our agenda will likely look the same in a biennium because, as you can see, they're pretty high level to encompass us. Like, it allows us to work on a lot of bills under that versus delineating specific proposals, which then can change or other ones get introduced. This year we'll be supporting a lot of the traditional bills you see that are brought forward by partners or part of the bigger discussion about revenue options, but we are putting forward a bill, and it just got scheduled for the hearing about an hour ago. It's House Bill 1811, and it basically gives cities and towns the option to levy a fire benefit charge. And so that is something that we're bringing forward and working on. Rep. Sells is a sponsor, and it has a hearing next week in House Local Government.
Yeah, and similar to a lot of the other tools in the toolbox, as the common colloquial metaphor is used, it would require a public vote. I think this one in particular requires 60% voter approval, but it would be something that council, if adopted by the legislature, could consider in future years as a way to supplement in possibly a more progressive fashion public financing of our fire services.
Thank you. And I think the only other question I have is, at some point, will you follow up with us and let us know kind of what the status is on any of the MACA funding?
Yeah, are you saying, like, in the proposal that was put forward by the governor, was any of it reduced?
Yeah, what kind of the status, if there's anything that was changed as far as how that impacts us. Doesn't have to be now, it can be,
Yep. We looked in the governor's one, it isn't, but I'll watch in the House and Senate. That's something I should have said. While the operating budget's pretty flush, the capital budget this year, it just has its leftover, which is $82 million. And the governor chose to use a lot of federal money to have more money to spend in the capital budget in some housing and behavioral health areas. It's unclear if the legislature will do that yet. So we keep an eye on that. But yes, absolutely. We bird dog that MACA account to make sure our SARCO funding is not touched, for sure.
Great. Thank you. And we will move on to Councilmember Zarlingo.
I have some work to do to read the materials and digest more of this. The only concern I thought I'd share as an issue is the potential loss of local control with respect to those housing issues. I think those are often determined different locality to locality. And so I'd like to retain what control we can that way of our own future and housing. I'm positive about a bunch of the missing middle solutions at ADUs and things like that. I think there are great opportunities, but also the issue of local control. I'll raise that now. That's really all I have.
Thanks, Councilmember Zarlingo. If I may, Council President
Yes,
Stonecipher, just a response. I had the opportunity of being formally employed by the Master Builders Association, and I will say a lot of this legislation isn't to address issues with communities like Everett, which were, I think, viewed as pretty forward-thinking and proactive in terms of trying to address housing issues. But I think the legislature is trying to address issues of communities who aren't taking that forward-looking viewpoint and addressing their own housing availability challenges. So yeah, it's a tough tension, and I empathize and completely understand your perspective. And certainly we haven't weighed in on any of those bills, pros or cons, but I think Everett's viewed as an example to look to rather than a city that the legislature's pointing at. So anyway, just good context.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
I will echo Nick's comments. Unfortunately, the legislature can't just pick and choose who gets to abide by new zoning requirements. So we cities get all lumped into one. If there is one bad actor, we unfortunately have to deal with those repercussions. I will say that there has been, for once, an acknowledgement that cities do need planning dollars to implement a lot of the new GMA land use regulations at the state.
Great. Thank you guys so much for the high level overview. Definitely appreciate it. Like I said, I was wondering with regards to housing, and something that's near and dear to my heart, especially the missing middle portion of events. Are there any bills that have been introduced to address condominium regulations or just condominium regulation reform?
I saw one bill that was introduced, I want to say a day ago, but I haven't had a chance to run through. I'll make sure to put that on my list and send you what that does. But that's the only one that I have seen in regard to condo regulation. I will say about maybe 2 years ago or 3, if my memory serves me right, the legislature did address some specifics on condo reform, and to them, they feel like they have solved the issue and have, whether you agree or disagree with that. So that's why we haven't seen the huge proliferation of condo regulation bills.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I'd also be curious to know if there's any bills that are regarding short-term vacation rental properties and any sort of reform bills or regulation bills that are on the table as well.
The only ones that come to mind is really limiting the use of ADUs to be used for short-term rental properties. That has entered the conversation. A lot of legislators don't want ADUs to be used for short-term rentals and really want to make sure that those are available as an affordable housing option. There hasn't been a larger conversation about addressing short-term rentals if you have specifics that you would like to see addressed.
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about it at another time.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all that I have. If they need any suggestions on what to do with that $1 billion in ARPA dollars, I got a couple suggestions. Otherwise, yeah, I look forward to collaborating with you guys and being kept in the loop on the rest of the session. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, thank you for the presentation tonight. I just have one comment about a lot of the requirements that the state legislature and the governor is imposing on our city and the lack of support. So I'm sure you're addressing that. You brought up the Growth Management Act and the requirements that the cities have to follow. So I appreciate your efforts into making sure that when they do make these changes, that there's some support for the cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. I guess I'm curious. I know this is a high overview, and I think we might have gotten an email from Deputy Mayor Nick Harper, but I haven't read it, so I apologize if this question is answered already. And that is, when it comes to which bills that not only is the city looking at, but what we are supporting, I have not formalized this question very well, but I am particularly concerned about the police reform clarification bills. And I have a feeling that possibly the city takes a different stance than I do. And so, which is, that's how the world works. So my question is, when do we know which bills the city is supporting? And yeah, I guess that's the question.
Thanks, Councilmember Vogely. Like in years past, I think last year was a perfect example. You did take a position on a particular piece of legislation that the city as an entity didn't. And so I think all council members should feel empowered to, as individually elected officials, go down, and as long as you clarify this isn't an official city position, make comments in writing or verbally on any matter. We've deliberately chosen not to weigh in on issues that we think are of heightened controversy, where we think the council and or the city in whole may be divided. But certainly when we do take positions on particular issues, we will clearly communicate that to all 7 of you, in particular, if we think it's an issue where, 1 or more of you may not have unanimity on the particular subject. So I think that's the best response I can provide.
I just want to add to, often as an elected body, you guys have other jobs and work that you do outside the city. And although I'm full-time with the city with so many city departments, we rely very heavily on the expertise of the directors that lead those departments. And so, when we are developing the legislative agenda, it is in partnership with our directors and managers and the people that do the work every day, 24/7, 365 days a year, and we very much follow their lead. And then as Nick shared, when there are things that are controversial, we typically know, and we try to bring any of those types of things to your attention. But for the most part, many of the things is really about making sure that our departments get the funding they need, get the information they need to do their job well for our constituents and our residents. So we will do our very best to keep you all closely in the loop, but do know that there's a lot of experts that have been working on this together with Aaron and Lisette. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor and Mr. Harper. Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Call me City Bot 6004, whatever you want.
Thank you. And just another comment, because somebody brought it to my attention today, and the numbers of houses and housing units and like 2+ and single family zones and whatnot in the Herald Business Journal, Everett, as to your comment earlier, Nick, is doing quite well, I suppose, and having more than just single family homes. And it would behoove other communities and our neighboring jurisdictions to raise their game and follow along in allowing all sorts of housing in all places. Okay. Thank you, Lisette. And oh shoot. I've forgotten your Elena. Aaron. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. And we go to Councilmember Toohey.
Thank you, Council President. Well, I want to thank both of you for your presentation tonight. You guys are always so great at bringing us up to speed, and really appreciate hearing from both of you. It's great to hear that there's so many issues that are so relevant to our city that are being addressed, and whether the state is reviewing and clarifying, police reform, which I think there were some issues there. But also, I'm glad to hear that they're rethinking the long-term care bill that they had. I know that as with our business that I run during the day, it was an important thing, and that we clarified, and I thought it was a little confusing, so hopefully they'll get that straightened out for everybody. But happy to hear about the fire benefit charge, and I certainly hope that goes through. That's something that I know that we have talked about a lot over the years, and how that could happen, and if the state can help that move along, I think that would be great. So, and obviously the housing needs that the state is looking at, I think, is important too. So anyway, appreciate your hard work. It's a tremendous amount this next few days or 60 days that you guys have. So anyway, thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. And for my comments, I just have a couple things. I first just wanted to say I too am really excited about the prospect that we would have an opportunity to impose or ask our voters to consider a fire benefit charge. I think this is a very progressive way to fund our services, and look forward to hopefully having an opportunity to do that. I've been working with the fire department on trying to figure out how we pay for these services long term, and that would certainly go a long way in helping that. And then my other question is just, we have some new council members, and I wanted just to get kind of an overview of how will we be briefed on the during the session? What is the reporting cycle, and how do we sort of plug into what we're working on and learn about evolving legislation and what the city's role and positions have been on those things?
May I, Council President?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I met with Councilmember Schwab on Monday afternoon. He's our Intergovernmental Relations Liaison for the committee. So he and I are going to meet bi-weekly every Monday afternoon or every other Monday afternoon throughout session and actually throughout the year, because obviously government relations doesn't just amount to state work. We have federal, tribal, other work regionally and beyond to address. I will be sending you that a report that Aaron and Lisette prepare weekly. So you'll receive that weekly. That's an updated list of session priorities, bill status. Aaron and Lisette may have commentary they'd like to offer on that report or not, but I'll send that to you weekly. And then on Councilmember Schwab and my bi-weekly meeting, we can determine whether or not, a committee meeting is necessary to talk about a specific set of topics or topic. If there are council items that, you want to address ahead of a council meeting. So I would leave that to you and Councilmember Schwab to determine that schedule on kind of an ad hoc basis. But so from our perspective, that'll be the plan. Again, is weekly updates to the council as a whole, bi-weekly in-person meetings between me and Councilmember Schwab, and then I'll communicate as often with each of you individually as is necessary.
Great, that sounds like a great plan. So Aaron and Lisette, thank you so much for being here this evening. We appreciate your work, and I know you've got a lot to do with this session. It's a short session, but they just compact a lot of work into a shorter period of time, I'm sure. So again, thank you for your work on behalf of the city.
Thank you.
Thanks. That brings us to the end of our, oh no, I'm sorry. We have one more briefing item. We'll move to item 4, the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, or the PROS plan. This is a general briefing, and I think we have our Parks Director, Bob Leonard, here.
Yes, good evening. Bob Leonard, Director of Parks and Facilities. I have 3 goals with tonight's briefing. First off, I want to use this as a mechanism to get the draft City of Everett 2022 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, or PROS plan, into your hands so that you have enough time to review it. Secondly, I wanted the council to get a brief overview of what a PROS plan is and why it is important. I believe this will add valuable context while you are reviewing the draft plan. Lastly, I wanted the opportunity to introduce to council our consultants that have been helping us tremendously with this project for the last 12 months. Burke Consulting, in conjunction with park staff, have been working with the community, city staff, park board, and planning commission to create this draft plan. Lisa Greeter with Burke is here to give the presentation on what is a PROS plan. Lisa and I will be available to answer questions on the briefing after the presentation. While we do not plan on discussing the actual draft plan tonight, I would welcome a follow-up committee meeting or meetings that would welcome and encourage the entire council to not wait until the scheduled February 9th briefing to ask questions about the plan, but rather send us questions as you are reviewing the material. Thank you. And without further ado, here is Lisa with Burke Consulting.
Good evening. I can share my screen with just a few of the slides. Is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Bob gave a great overview. We're just going to hit some highlights on what is in a Parks, Recreation, Open Space plan, how it relates to Everett and its needs and desires for parks, the overall timeline, and then reference to the project website where a lot of information about engagement and the development of the plan is located. So just to step back, the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan, or PROS plan, it's meant to be a long-range system plan for parks. And the Recreation and Conservation Office of the state of Washington has a planning manual. And in order to qualify for grants, they ask that the plans be prepared. And in the green box there, we've identified the items they'd like to see in a Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan. So they'd like to see goals and objectives, an inventory of the system. They want to see how you've engaged the public, They ask for what's called a demand and need analysis. That certainly relates to public involvement because that's part of people expressing their needs, but it is also taking a look at some analytics about the system and sharing what may be needed now and over the life of the plan. A level of service assessment. The Recreation and Conservation Office considers that an optional item. However, this plan also supports your comprehensive plan under the Growth Management Act, and there you do need to set some levels of service to help you form your capital facility plan. And then a capital improvement program, which is what are the physical improvements you intend to provide that fulfill the level of service that you set and the goals and objectives of the plan. And then the Recreation and Conservation Office wants to be sure that the plan is locally approved. So that would mean approval by the City Council. So in terms of how this is important for Everett, it's a requirement that it be, if you want to be eligible for grants, that you update it every 6 years. And so you are due. Your last plan was created in 2016. And it, again, will allow you to be eligible for grants, but it also supports your comprehensive plan. And it helps in the budgeting as you have a capital improvement program associated with your budget. So it supports that. And just as a little history, since one of the factors in creating the plan is to be eligible for grants, the city used the 2016 plan to seek grants and put in many applications, and the ones on the right-hand side were approved and funded. You'll see a number of them relate to renovation. The city is also hoping to use RCO grants for funding new capital improvements as well as renovations and replacements in the future. So this overall timeframe, as Bob mentioned, we started about a year ago. We started at the Parks Board retreat in January a year ago, and then proceeded through some visioning efforts with the department itself, as well as obviously with the community. And we went out and did visioning with the community with a number of events. We developed some ideas with the department, as Bob mentioned, and then came out with a draft plan, have shared that with the community. The Parks Board vetted it for several months, and they made their recommendations in December, and it's now transmitted to you. And the Recreation Conservation Office wants to see the document by March 1st of 2022. They basically, every 6 years, you make an update that they basically accept it March 1st of an even year. So this is your year. And so Bob can cover this in more detail, but I think after tonight's introduction, there'd be a deeper briefing on the 9th and then the hearing on the 16th. And so this is directing you towards the project website, where a lot of information about engagement and the documents and ideas of the plan are located. So this is the link, Parks, Recreation and Open Space Plan. And at that site, as I mentioned, is the document. There's also a story map and background information on the project. So I think, Bob, that's back to you.
Yeah, that was the presentation. I guess we would entertain any questions if there is any.
Great, let's go down the council roster and see who has questions. We'll start with Councilmember Fossey.
Thank you so much for the overview. And I look forward to reviewing the plan in detail. Thanks so much. No more questions or comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
I think this was the plan I received via email. I want to know if it's different than the one on the link, because I was diving into that last night. I think 310 pages or so, trying to get a first shot at least at this area in District 5. Thank you for this. Obviously a huge amount of work and a lot of thought that went into it from what I've seen so far. If any of that is different than the one at the link than the one we got emailed, just please flag that for me so I can make sure I'm looking at the latest one. Thanks.
The link was updated today. There's just small differences with the link that was in the briefing memo. The Parks Board made very few changes, but they did review the comments that came in the fall, and they did make some updates, and we've described the difference in the page count. There's probably about 50 more pages. It's the final appendix, and it details the comments that were received and how the plan was adjusted to reflect those comments. But otherwise, I think the Parks Board was pretty satisfied that the plan met a lot of the goals and intent that they sought, especially after seeing the visioning effort last spring. And so I think that'll probably be the main change. The story map also has a high-level summary of the input from the fall that the Parks Board considered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few comments. I'm only on about page 40, so I got a ways to go to make it to that finish line. But yeah, I'm really glad to see accessibility as a priority, not just geographic accessibility, but also accessibility for children in our area, so that all children can access parks regardless of their visible or invisible disabilities. I appreciate the consideration that from tribes and from our local tribal neighbors on best ways to be stewards of the land. And haven't gotten to this section yet, but I'm glad to see that there's a large portion dedicated to talking about the tree canopy in our area and ways that we can support and bolster our tree canopy. So I'm really looking forward to getting to that. I think it's on page 275 or so. But yeah, I'll have some questions later, but also just wanted to mention too, I feel like COVID's really shined a bright light on just how important it is to enjoy our outdoor spaces. And I've been noticing a lot lately that folks are really hungry for outdoor meeting spaces to just to stay in a safe spot, safe space from COVID and just be outdoors. And so moving down the road, I think that having those spaces in our neighborhoods where people can get together and meet and enjoy each other in a safe way is going to be one of the COVID keepers that we'll have for the long run. And I think that I do think that prioritizing these accessible outdoor spaces in Everett is something that's really important. So I would like to, definitely not tonight, but down the road, I think there's room for a larger conversation about funding opportunities and funding mechanisms to help with supporting our Parks Department and enhancing our outdoor accessibility. So thank you for your work, and I'll be reaching out with my 87 questions. Thank you.
I just want to take the opportunity to say I agree it's a big document, so I just want to reiterate our request is if you felt like you could, we would be willing to entertain questions, just as you get them over the next several weeks. We'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. We'll move to Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, thanks for the comments so far. I agree. I'm going to spend a lot of time reading the document, and thank you for the presentation. And I too will be sending a list of comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vogely.
Thanks very much. I had the opportunity of meeting with Bob and Kimberly and Lori earlier this week. Maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. COVID calendar is like, what? But so I want to say thank you, and also to Council Members Zarlingo and Ryan, that yes, indeed, we will be setting up a meeting between us three. So the Committee for Parks and Quality of Life Services that I am chairing. I don't think I said that earlier, but I said those words, but not that I was the chair, so I'm the chair. And so with Bob and Kimberly, there should be a date going around. So I'm looking forward to not only the pros plan, but also just all of the park stuff. And I really liked so all I could see was Burke Consulting as your name, but then I saw Kiz. So anyway, she said, this is your year. So I'm gonna go with that for parks. And might there be more federal funding this year, because there seems to be more federal funding for everything. So with this being passed, hopefully, I mean, I'm going to assume that we will pass the pros plan and, you know, get grants and all of that. Is there any word if there's more funding?
So I'll try to jump in. There's not a word if there's more funding because there's so much funding available that everyone's still studying all the different opportunities, but you can trust that not only are all of our directors looking at those funding opportunities in our finance department, but our federal lobbyists as well, to try to connect us to as many funding opportunities for our park system. I think it's a great time to seek that, and we'll be writing as many grants as we are able to access those dollars, and we'll definitely keep you posted.
Sounds delightful, and thank you. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, I don't have any questions yet, but I really appreciate all the hard work and the long hours that went into this document and study. I know you guys have worked really hard on it for a very long time. So I thank Bob and his team and our Burke Consulting team. You guys really appreciate that. And I do agree with Councilmember Ryan, how important our outdoor spaces are. And in every neighborhood, we need to give folks a reason to get outside and be healthy and enjoy themselves. So the more we can do that, the better community, the better quality of life we have. And it's just that important. So I look forward to reading the whole document and look forward to hopefully some great things coming our way with the outdoors. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to add a little historical perspective. I'm entering my 19th year on the city council, and I think this is the 4th pros plan that I processed that I've been through. I didn't get to go fully through this one. But in those 18 years that I've served, I've been the liaison to the Parks Board far more than half of them. When I started on city council, the Parks Board was where they put the newbies because it really just wasn't considered very important. And in fact, when I asked for the Parks Board liaison assignment and was talking to some of my council colleagues about how important I thought parks were, they advised me not to talk about parks because it was such a girl thing to do. And I thought that was really funny, being the only woman on the city council, that I was being advised not to talk about it because it wasn't important enough and it was just too girly. And yet we hear from Councilmember Vogely tonight when she visits the neighborhood meeting that really it's only the quality of life issues that our community really cares about. I mean, they expect us to deliver water. They expect us to take away their sewer. They expect us to provide roads. They expect us to provide public safety. But what they want us to provide is quality of life services. And there's nothing more important to the quality of the life in our community than our park system. And the system we have is amazing. We've struggled over the years to maintain it. We have cut funding from our parks. I mean, I think when I started on the city council, the parks budget was about 14% of the general fund budget, and it's now down to about, I think, 6 or 7%. And yet our community really notices when we don't mow the lawns. And I'm sure Bob can tell you, if you don't prune the trees or whatever those things are, our community cares deeply about our park system. And I think in the next decade, our ability to make an important and achievable plan to expand our park system to meet the growing needs that our community will face over the next, I mean, I don't know, I can't remember even how many, you know, residences and housing units and jobs we're planning on adding, but the impact on our park system is felt by that. There are more people out in the parks and trying to use them, and it's incumbent on us to make sure that we grow that, or we will erode our quality of life. It's one of the few treasures in our community that's free. Anyone can use the parks, and when I go by one of the parks by my house, I see all sorts of families out there utilizing the park for family reunions and picnics and get-togethers. And so I'm really happy to see this plan. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I will. I trust me, I will read every word of it. And then the next step after that will be to figure out how do we implement the plan and make sure that we can grow the park system, because it's really our job to do that. And I'll take up that charge, not on the committee this year, but whatever support that committee needs. Councilmember Vogel, you let me know. I'm happy to help lead the charge on that, because we just have to do it. We keep talking about it, we just don't do it. And it's really important that we do it. So thank you all. I'm really excited about this plan. Like as I mentioned, I've been through, I think, 4 pros plans. Some have been good, some have been not as good. This one is top notch. We did all the work that we really needed to do and made the investment that we need. So Mayor, thank you for investing in that and taking that on as a priority. I really appreciate that, because this is a plan that has done all the pieces that we really need to have so that we can move forward and go out to our community and sell them on the idea that we need more funding so that we can make this plan a reality. Mayor, I see your hand up, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank all the council for your comments and support of this plan and of staff and of our park system. It's so great to hear. And I want a special thank you to Councilmember Toohey for your thanks and support of staff in your comments and others. You know, Bob is doing heroic work and has a small and mighty team, and he's not only our parks director, he's also over our facilities as well. And so his job has grown, but the quality of work is outstanding from him and everybody on the team. So really just want to thank you, Bob, for your leadership of our parks department, and Burke Consulting is always wonderful to work with. So appreciate everything you've done and are continuing to do to support this plan. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of what's the next step on the plan, Bob, other than after we
have a scheduled briefing on February 9th that will go over a much more detailed briefing about the City of Everett's plan in detail. And then the following week, we have scheduled a public hearing and hopefully a action item for approval of the plan.
Great, thank you. We'll look forward to that, and council members have a lot of reading to do in the meantime. That brings us to the end of our agenda. We do have an executive session, but for those who are of our residents who are gonna sign off now, I'll just say that on the screen is the information you need to access City Council, and you can contact Deb Williams in the council office for further instructions on watching, listening, or participating in our weekly meetings. You can reach her at dwilliams@everettwa.gov, or you can always call the council office at 425-257-8703. We're going to move into executive session now. It's expected to last 15 minutes. We'll reconvene after that and adjourn. We do not anticipate any announcement. City Council has returned from the executive session and we are now adjourned.
Good night. Thank you.